Good day, guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's been a while. I've been busy for some time now. So in today's video, we'll be learning how to cut and sew a corset with a yoke. The last corset video that I uploaded was with a bra cup, but now this one is without a bra cup, though I'll still add my bra cup, but I have to draw the pattern alone before anything. So we are doing it with a yoke this time. The first thing that I will do is to mark my shoulder. My shoulder is 15 divided by 2 is 7.5 plus half inch. That's why I marked it. And from that point where I measured my shoulder, I will come down by 1 inch. That is for my shoulder slant, and I've drawn my line there. So I'll mark my chest line, that is 8, my bust point, that is 10, my underbust 13, and my half length is 16. Then I'll go ahead and add 2 inches for seam allowance. That will give me 18. So I'll go ahead and roll out these lines. That's my half length, that's my allowance, that's my underbust, and that's my bust point, then my chest line. This is my shoulder slant. So from the point where I marked my shoulder, I will draw a straight line down to the chest line. The chest line is 2 inches above your bust point, and after doing that, I'll go ahead and determine the midpoint of the armhole line. Remember, from my shoulder to my chest line is 8, and if you divide it by 2, you'll be getting 4 inches. So here is the midpoint, and that is where I will draw my armhole curve from. Sorry guys, I don't have an armhole curve for now, so that's why I used my free hand to draw this. I'll label my lines: my chest line, my bust point, my underbust, my half length, and my allowance. So my nipple to nipple is 3.5, but I'll add half inch, that is 4. My nipple to nipple is 7 divided by 2 is 3.5 plus 1 half inch for seam allowance, that is 4. So I will draw my 4 down. It will cut across the bust point, the hip, the half length, and the allowance. So I'll go up by 1 inch from the chest line. I'll extend my chest line by 1 inch because I want my corset to cover my bust, my breast very well. So at this point, you mark half inch, and at the underbust or the bust point too. Then at the underbust, I'll subtract 1.5 inch on both sides, making it 3 inches. So I've marked 1.5 inch on this side and 1.5 inch on the other side. I don't have a curve, so I'll curve it to my free hand. I'll connect from my bust point to the line where I marked 1.5 inch. I measured this at the underbust, measured the 3 inches, that is 1.5 inch on both sides at the underbust. Then to get your curve for the bra cup, you measure what you have at your nipple to nipple. Nipple to nipple is 3.5. I'll measure the 3.5 as well, and from there I'll connect to my 1.5 inch point that I marked initially. So from there I'll extend that line, that 3.5 upwards. You can see this is how it looks like. I'll extend it up to my chest line, and from the point where I extended my chest line by 1 inch, I'll connect down to that point. As you can see, this is how it looks. I feel using this method will make it very easy for you to cut your corset. As you can see, one part of the bra cup is ready. Then from the point where I marked ½ inch at the chest line, at the center front, I'll connect the line to the point where I marked my oval bust. That is the point where I marked 1 inch from the chest line. So as you can see, our cup is taking shape already. Then the next thing that I will do is to curve out my cup from my center front. So what I will do is that I will connect the line between the chest and the bust point. At those points where I marked ½ inch, I'll connect the lines. The reason why I marked this ½ inch is because remember that it is on fold. You will cut it on fold. So when you open it up, it will be 1 inch, and the 1 inch will serve as the distance between the two busts. Remember, the cup will be 2, so the distance between the two cups will be half inch. So at the upper bust, I'll mark 1 inch on both sides. Then I'll connect it to the bust point. As you can see, I've connected it to the bust point, and the shape of our cups is out now. Next thing I will do is to mark my neckline for the yoke. The neckline will be a very small neck. I'll mark 3 by 3. Then I will draw my curve to be a round neck. So this is the yoke. Our yoke is out now. So remember, when cutting the yoke, it will stop at the chest line. You can come up if you want, depending on how deep you want your yoke. I'll cut my neckline, my shoulder slants, my armhole. Remember, you extend the neckline of the yoke to the armhole, so the yoke will stop at the chest line. Stop at the chest line. Then I'll cut and then continue with my neckline for the yoke. So when cutting, you add 0.5 inch to this curved part, because you will join it back to the bustier, to your corsets, while sewing. So we are left with this corset part now. The next thing that I will do is to extend my dart lines. I'll go ahead and extend this point where I marked 1½ inch. I'll extend it down to my half length and the allowance. Then I'll extend the other parts as well. So this will serve as my darts. I'll go ahead and shade it so that you understand better. The shaded part is the part that I will cut out. I'll cut this place out. It is not part of our corset. But before I do that, I'll go ahead and take my body measurements. So my bust is 36 divided by 2 is 9, plus 2 inches seam allowance, that is 11. I'll mark 11. Then my waistline is 26 divided by 4 is 6.5. 6.5 plus 3 inches. When adding my allowance, I'll add 3 inches first, because we subtracted 1.5 on both sides of this dart. So 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3 inches. You have to add it back, so that is 6.5 plus 3 inches, that is 9.5, plus 2 inches seam allowance, that will be 11.5. 6.5 plus 3 inches, 9.5, plus 2 inches for your proper seam allowance, and that will be 11.5. So I'm trying to repeat so that you guys will understand. 9.5 plus another 2 inches for the proper allowance, that is 2 inches, that is 11.5 inch. So I'll go ahead and connect my line from my bust down to my waistline, and I'll extend the line up to my armhole. Then the next thing we'll do is to cut. So I'll cut out these shaded parts. So after cutting it off, you realize that our dart is out already. So after cutting that, the next thing I will do is to cut out my cups. I'll cut this one out, and I'll cut the other one for the center front out. So after cutting them out, remember to add 0.5 inch round the cups and that line. Though I added my half inch while cutting my darts, but I'm just adding 0.5 inch to avoid mistakes. So you add 0.5 inch round your cups and round the place where you cut out your cups from. 0.5. I'm trying to write this so that I won't forget while cutting, because I might probably forget my allowance. So I'm marking it as a reminder for my allowance. So go ahead and cut the back part, and I'm trying a hack. My pattern paper is small, so I will use my gum to join it so that I'll have extra. So this is a hack, guys. It will help you to minimize the waste. So I will join it with a gum so that it will be very enough for me to cut out what I want to cut out. So this is what I'll be using for my back pattern. And the back pattern, you can manipulate, you can make it any style you want to make it. First of all, this one will have zipper allowance, so I'll add 2 inches zipper allowance first, and I'll go ahead and rule the line. Any measurements I'll be taking for the back will start from this zipper allowance. So I'll label it zipper allowance so that we won't get confused. So from the place where I marked my shoulder, I will mark my shoulder slants, mark my chest line, my dart line. My dart line will stop at 9 inches. Guys, please ignore the 13 inches. I made a mistake. I wouldn't have marked it. So for the back line, just for the back pattern, you only need your chest line, your dart line, and your half length. My dart is stop at 9 inches from my shoulder. So I will draw my lines and label them so that you won't get confused. So I'll draw my lines. Sorry for that 13 inches that I marked there. It was a mistake. That was supposed to be underbust, but for the back measurement, we don't need our underbust. So after doing that, I'll go ahead and label my line. So this is my chest line. This is my dart. I'll not label this one. And this is my half length. The last line is my half length. I've labeled my half length and my allowance. Then from my half length point, I'll measure 4 inches for that. Then I'll subtract half inch on both sides. I'll extend my 4 inches for that up to the dart line, and I'll connect my half inches that I marked there, the half inch that I marked there, to the dart line point, and this is serve as my dart. So at the neck, I'll measure 3 by 1.5 for now. At the end of the back pattern cutting, I'll show you guys how you can manipulate your back pattern. So from my shoulder line, I'll connect my chest line and I'll curve my armhole. The next thing that I will do right now is to take our body measurement. My bust is 36 divided by 4 is 9 plus 2 inches 11. At my half length, I'll take my waist measurement. 27 divided by 4 is 6.5 plus 1 inch for that and another 2 inches for seam allowance. Then I'll connect my line. So I'll go ahead and cut out the back pattern first, then I'll show you how you can manipulate the back pattern. Remember, the back will have a yoke as well, so I'll cut out my neckline first for now. Then I'll cut from my half length. I'll add my allowance soon because my pattern paper wasn't. I'll notch my darts. So for the neckline, I told you initially that I'll show you how to manipulate your back part. So for the neckline, I'll label my yoke first. And for the neckline of the yoke, it will be a V-neck. My yoke will have a V-neck. I will use a tool, a net for my neckline, for my yoke. So I'll extend the V point and it will stop at my chest exactly. It will not cross the zipper allowance. It will not have zipper allowance because I don't want my zip to extend up to that point. So I'll cut out my yoke. My yoke will stop exactly at my zipper allowance. So if you want your corset to be open at the back, that means you will not add your zipper allowance. There will be no zipper allowance at the back. Instead, you will remove 2 inches. I'll cancel out the zipper allowance to show you what I mean. You will not have to add this. If possible, if you want it to be very wide, you will have to reduce the back pattern by 2 inches so that it will be very wide at the back. So I've cut out my fabric. This is the pieces of the corset. Don't mind the color of the pattern paper, it is still the same thing, just that I did this video at a different time. So I want to use this one and show you guys how I join my corset. So I've joined my brackle, I've joined my cup parts. This is the lining and this is the main fabric. I'll finish joining them and I iron them open. I iron the seam allowances open. So this is my cup parts. I've joined it and this is how it looks like. I've ironed everything wide open. So this is my tool, this is my yoke. I doubled it, as you can see. I doubled the yoke so that it will be stronger. And this is the yoke for the back. As you can see, it stopped at the point, as the zipper allowance point. It did not extend to the full length of the zipper allowance. So I've added my channels for my boning. As you can see, I've inserted boning in this particular one. And the next thing is to fix my bra cup. So I used needle and thread to hold my bra cup to the fabric before inserting it. So after adding your bra cup, it will add shape. Then you can go ahead and join. As you can see, I've joined my cup parts and the main body of the corset, and this is how it looks like. The next thing is to go ahead and join your yoke. You place it at this point, then you will sew around. I did the same thing to my lining, though the lining will not have a yoke. And I'll to turn my corset with the lining in order to give it a neat finishing. Remember, after joining, you will notch and top stitch. So I'll place the lining on top. I place the lining on top and I'll go ahead and turn it. So after turning your corset, you have something like this. So in order to hold your lining in place, you will insert a hemming gum inside round the neckline of the corset and iron it down so that the lining will not be popping out from the inside. So I did the same thing to the back as well, and I've joined my yoke and I've joined the front and the back, and this is how it looks like. If you open the inside, this is how it looks like. So you can see it's appeared neat. Then the next thing is to insert my boning. I'll be using a plastic boning. So instead of using a candle to flatten the head, to curve the tip, I'll have to just scratch it on the wall so that the tip will be curved. So after doing that, you can go ahead and join your bustier to the down part of your dress and your corset is ready. You can add any sleeve of your choice, and that's all. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.